This video is brought to you by T-Blocks. Enjoy the content now, but stay for the shilling later. Season 3 of Rick and Morty has ended, and that means another multi-year sabbatical as Dan Harmon, Justin Roiland, and Starboard Industries take their time in producing the next season. But before we start wondering what the next season will bring us, let's take a look to talk about the less than stellar finish to the third season. Rick gets into a pissing match with the President of the United States, as voiced by Keith David. For anyone else, this would be a great, hilarious matchup, but not so much for the smartest man in the multiverse. In the episode, Rick and Morty are sick of being used as lame errand boys for the President, and things quickly get out of hand. As hilarious as it is to see Rick get into ultra-violent fights where he uses his super science in a myriad of creative ways to dismember the opposition, there was one crucial thing that was missing from this little escapade. Rick needs to be facing off against a worthy opponent, or someone we as the audience want to see get beaten down. The perfect example of this is in the first season episode Something Wicked This Way Comes, where Rick is pitted against the literal devil, a perfect manifestation of the myriad of tainted mystical wish fulfillment we're used to seeing in stories like The Monkey's Paw, Twilight Zone, and of course Needful Things. It's a timeless trope and a narrative that never quite seems to go away. So seeing Rick pitted against a literal manifestation of that trope and getting into an ultra-petty business competition where he almost forces the devil to commit suicide is amazing. It's the kind of cathartic release we as the audience love to see because it's something we never see in a more traditional story setup, because we're used to seeing mere mortals buckle against the power of the supernatural, but with Rick on the scene, we get to see the devil get his due. And then in Season 2, we have Rick pitted against what is essentially himself in The Ricks Must Be Crazy. He's facing off against someone about as intelligent and capable with the same kind of substance abuse problems as him. The only thing that saves Rick is his willingness to be completely and utterly ruthless, and the breadth of experience he has as a violent terrorist. These are great matchups. And it's not like Rick and Morty is some kind of shonen manga battle series where we're waiting to see who he faces off against next, but Dan Harmon loves him some crazy ultra-violence, and given Rick's predilection towards super science, we get some of the most amusing fight scenes ever seen in Western animation. But the problem is, we know Rick is the smartest man in the universe. We've seen him single-handedly destroy the Galactic Federation and the Interdimensional Council of Ricks. He can't even be stopped by himself. So seeing how unquestionably unbeatable Rick is, if we're going to see him throw down with someone to gain any kind of thrill or comedic value, it needs to be against someone or something that can pose the threat. As amusing as it is to see him get in a pissing competition with the President, who tries to use every super secret project the United States government has, we know the President is never going to win. The problem is, pretty much all the tech the United States pulls out is probably stuff that was reverse engineered either from the Galactic Federation's brief stay on Earth or stuff Rick handed over when he was feeling magnanimous. There's the gigantic transporter that needs to be airlifted in, the shrinking pill that causes cancer, or the soldiers with cloaking technology that Rick can totally see. It's like watching a British Mark V, one of the clunky old tanks from World War I, go against an M1 Abrams. Sure, they both have armor and cannons, but it's absolutely no contest. One of the most appealing things about Rick is that while we as the audience will never be capable of the super scientific feats that he is, we can vicariously live through him. Rick is what I like to call an unlikable likable character. He has very few redeeming qualities, but because he's not fettered by the constrictions of conventional etiquette or morality, he can say and do things we'd never get away with, which is what makes him so entertaining to watch. But that's only entertaining if he's pitted against something we know can at least put up a fight, or if Rick is somehow handicapped, either by circumstance, or to prove that he's still better even when he's deliberately hamstrung himself. Take the Pickle Rick episode. Rick is massively disadvantaged. Normally he would have torn through everything he was up against without breaking a sweat, so half of the episode's fun is seeing the self-inflicted misery he puts himself through just to avoid family therapy. The other half is seeing him overcome his pickle disability to conquer a sewer filled with vicious rats and eventually an entire embassy filled with cannon fodder worthy of a 90s action movie. But none of that would work if he wasn't a pickle. Of course, there are times when we do want to see Rick just plow his way through a problem, and it's always set up as such. For instance, we see Rick's complete control over pretty much the entire apocalyptic wasteland situation in Rick Man Sing the Stone, or the complete lack of concern he has for the planet's destruction in Get Shrifty. And we know that this is an unfair setup. It's like man versus car. A car is always going to win, and we know it. We just want to go along with the ride. Once you introduce someone as a legitimate rival, we want something that's worthy of the label. Take the episode with the Vindicators. The idea of seeing Dan Harmon just unleash himself with everything he hates about the corporate feeding frenzy that is the modern superhero cinematic universe should have been a great moment of catharsis for him and the audience. But all the Vindicators are dumb straw men designed to be easily knocked down. There's no way a character like Crocubot or 1 Million Ants are ever supposed to be taken seriously. It's such a huge disappointment since the idea of Rick facing off against an alcoholic Tony Stark / Peter Quill quit machine is the material dreams are made of. That's one of the reasons why the finale kind of just falls flat in comparison to previous Rick and Morty finales. We've seen Rick death matches before, which are fine for mid-season episodes, but given the impossibly high standard Rick and Morty has set for itself in terms of how great their finales are, just seeing Rick beat on the president, who has no possible way to compete, just feels well below what the show is capable of. It's fun to watch Rick be the smartest guy in the room with the best one-liners and zingers, but it gets old if it's at the perpetual expense of someone who will never be able to match up with him. So hopefully whenever Season 4 comes around, Dan Harmon will either give us less Rick fights, or at least if he does want to do more gonzo action sequences, at least give Rick someone or something worth fighting. Do you like clothes but hate shopping? Then T-Blocks is the subscription service for you. But I know what you're thinking. But Lobster, how is that any different than Loot Crate or the other subscription services? Well, T-Blocks sends you t-shirts, which is clothing, which is actually useful, unlike the useless swag junk that Loot Crate keeps peddling on gullible schmucks. And this isn't just knockoff brand crap. T-Blocks hooks you up with licensed shirts for all the stuff you love, because you need clothes. How else are you going to keep your puny human man flesh protected from the elements? T-shirts are useful for any occasion. Wear them, give them to friends, give them to enemies, knit them together, make a quilt. T-shirts are life. And you know the best part? It'll only cost you $6.99. That's right, you can get 12 shirts sent to you for once a month for only $6.99. And you know what? If ultra cheap licensed goods are too basic for you, then there's also the Community T-Block set, which features original designs from the best up-and-coming artists, so you can keep that hipster street cred. But I'm here to save you even more money! Use the code LOBSTERTBX at checkout, and you'll save 10% on any order. Be a t-shirt wearing god amongst mortals. Use the power of the most expensive seafood to get you the cheapest t-shirts now! Lobsters made of lights.